Good evening, I'm Les Crook, your host for Artists Alive. Tonight's show is being brought to you by the Yuba Sutter Regional Arts Council and Continental Cablevision Channel 5. We're coming to you from Clipper Mills, high up in the Sierras. We're at about 3,800 feet, and we're at the home of Philip Sciortino. And Philip is no newcomer to Artists Alive. I believe this is about the fourth show, Philip, that Artists Alive has done with you?
It's the fourth show.
And Philip, for those of you that don't know, is a sculptor. Not just a sculptor, but probably one of the finer ones you've seen in a long, long time. We're in your shop here in Clipper Mills, and how long have you been here, Philip?
We've been here 18 years, Les. And we came up here when my oldest daughter was just a baby. We came from San Francisco, and at the time has flown. In fact, my daughter Cassandra, who was just a baby then, has now entered college in Santa Rosa.
Time flies, doesn't it?
Yes.
So this is a big change, moving to Clipper Mills from San Francisco. Do you feel that this helped your creativity?
Well, I really don't think it, so far as my creativity goes, it was necessarily a positive adjunct. I found San Francisco and city life, metropolitan life, to be very stimulating. And there's an awful lot of intellectual activity going there. And this is a remote area, and though we have some certainly intelligent people here, we live a fairly reclusive life. And of course, I have good conversation with my family, my wife, Magan. But I think that San Francisco would have been stimulating as well. But actually, we lived a rather reclusive life there. So it evolved, and had a little money at the time, and we decided, since we were having our first child, that certainly I didn't think that city life would be conducive for the family. So that's particularly the reason we moved here.
There's got to be far less interruptions when you're starting on one of your sculptures here than you would probably find in a metropolitan community. Is that right?
Oh my! I'll tell you, I feel like I'm spring-loaded down here. Again, that family responsibility, a father whose business is at home, is not respected like it would be if I had the boss in the shop. My family wouldn't feel so free to call on me, my children in particular. So I'm coming and going here constantly. There's a tremendous amount of interruption here. Plus, I'm always trying to generate publicity. I have various responsibilities in Sacramento and San Francisco and elsewhere, and I'm always coming and going. So,
well, when you start with a sculptor, I know that many people with different types of artwork that we deal with start with a picture. They draw it, and I understand that's not necessarily the way that you begin. How does your process actually start?
It could start in a number of ways. If it's a commission and someone has contacted me, and then of course I may be subject to a preconceived sculpture that they have in mind. For example, recently with the Sacramento Symphony Orchestra, actually had a lot of input in that. We talked, Mrs. Boucher and I, who was their representative, and I talked on the phone, and I guess it was my idea ultimately to come up with the treble clef that I made for the symphony, Carter Nice, their conductor. Very often I have a client now who I sold another sculpture to, and now she's asked me to make something else. And she sent me a drawing and wants me to design a sculpture very much based on her drawing. But it's not really much of a sacrifice, since I noticed the drawing was a drawing of the sculpture I sold her.
Is that right?
There are a few modifications that I'm going to make. But often I've been hard at work lately doing something that I find one of the most difficult challenges that I ever come up against. Trying to dissolve a form into its simplest elements, but yet still maintain what I would consider to be all of the essentials of beauty. So I'll be taking a shower, I'll be driving, coming and going, and I'll try and turn that idea over in my mind like I understand some computers do, multi-dimensional computers, and I'll try and conceive it from every angle. And the better I see it, the more successful I am at rendering it. And
You're able to retain that image in your mind?
I'm able to elaborate on it, and but there's so much yet to be discovered. It's common with sculptors, since we're three-dimensional people, to take a malleable medium like clay or wax and materialize our ideas in 3 dimensions. It's absolutely common. Sculptors will sometimes draw. I draw things occasionally, especially if I'm going to make a relief sculpture, which is the kind of sculpture that is like a plaque or a facsimile of a painting. It's in 2 dimensions, something that one would hang on a wall, or the kind of thing we see in a lot of Greek sculpture, the Parthenon, etc. Various friezes fall in the category of relief. But there, since I'm dealing with 2 dimensions and not 3 dimensions, I will make drawings. But typically with 3 dimensions, so many drawings are required that I just find it easier to sit down with a malleable shape and start to fashion it that way.
Now, you primarily work in marble and bronze, isn't that right?
That's right.
And how did you get started doing this in the first place?
Well, very earliest days, when going back probably to 12 years old, 11 years old, I began to frequent a local college in Richmond, Indiana, Earlham College. Very nice, beautiful, rather conservative place. And they had an art department there, and somehow I gravitated there. Although really I spent a lot of time in their science laboratory too, and had quite a chemistry system in my home. But I spent more time in their art department, and various professors, one then another. First a very older woman who was so kind to me, and then a gentleman who took her place, treated me like at that time I was probably about 14. Allowed me into the class, sat me down in their studios like I was a member of the university, and I could stay there and spend all the time I want, and he'd come around and treat me virtually like the rest of the students.
So you got a very young start then.
Yes,
That's great. Why don't we start and show the viewers the process that you actually go through?
All right. This is a piece that I have in my hand right now that the viewers might, and yourself might have seen me doing a little cleanup work on when the program opened. It's kind of beat up now. This is a wax design. It's a Madonna and Child. It's a little bit obscure now, but here we have a little infant nursing, and here we have the Madonna's face. And it's kind of an entity. And this is the back side, and this is her hair swirling down. And she encompasses quite a lot of the feminine characteristics. She almost even looks pregnant, something that my client brought out to me that was inadvertent on my part. But I made this in marble for a local obstetrician, Yuba City. And I, not long ago, at one of my daughter's many award ceremonies, I guess I'm boasting about my daughter Cassandra now, there was a member of the Yuba City United Way there, and we sat at the same table, and I'd been wanting to find a good organization to make a contribution to. I said I wanted to give them a sculpture. They made arrangements to come up to my studio. They looked at many things. They said, why don't you make this for us? So this is going to be, when it's cleaned up, it'll be a bronze, very perfectly rendered, and they're going to have a raffle or an auction or something for the United Way sometime this year. If you're interested, get a hold of these people, and I hope to have it done, in the next couple of weeks or so.
Okay. Moving over to this table over here, you've got 3 different pieces set out here that don't resemble each other at all.
This table?
That's right.
This is a sculpture that I made quite some time ago. I'm very proud of it. This is a raw casting from the foundry that I'm doing business with presently. They're the Bennett brothers. They're extremely successful twin brothers. They're probably the largest art casters in the world. They're pretty good.
Where are they?
They're over in Placerville. And they also do foundry work for other artists. This is a male and female. People that have been to the Prune Festival and have seen my work have seen this sculpture finished and perfected. And it's a very difficult and complicated sculpture. It's really a large piece of jewelry. And there's so much shape and form here, it's almost impractical for me to perfect these to the degree that I must have in order to put my name on it. But I've sold 2 of these, and I have 2 more raw castings, and this is an absolutely raw casting. The other one I'll show in a little while, it's from some distance from us, is well evolved from here. So remember this when I show you the piece that we'll see shortly, and you can see how it begins to evolve and become more perfected. But before it becomes a bronze, first it was a wax. In fact, first it was a waxed less, even as I designed it. As we discussed earlier, I sat and I made a male figure. This is the male. Over here we have the female figure. They're bound at the bottom and at the top with some abstract cloth, and they themselves have a twist. The twist is there to give it some impact, some movements, some motion. I really try to get away from anything static or anything dead. I want things to have vitality. My sculpture to have vitality. But so first it was made of wax. I sat and I literally took one piece and added it to another and another and another, and sometimes, in some cases, I'll make an appendage, an arm or a leg or 2 legs or a midsection or upper shoulders, and then I'll put them all together and harmonize them so the shapes are proportionately fit. So I made a complete male body, a complete female body. I put them back to back, meshed them together, bound them at the bottom with some cloth that is very common to me. It's almost become a signature, I think, this kind of fabric, and bound them at the top, and there we have it. But so that's the modeling process. But the point I would like to get to, before a sculpture can become a bronze, it needs to be a wax first, and
then it's dipped in the bronze?
Well, dipped is correct, but it's dipped in a ceramic slurry batter. Mm-hmm. It's a plaster medium. It's dipped repeatedly until there's a shell, a fireproof shell that encrusts this image, and there's an appropriate hole in and an appropriate hole out. And we have a wax image inside. To make a long story short, that entire unit is put in a kiln, the wax melts out. We have a void inside that precisely is the configuration of this. Hot bronze is poured in, and there we have the lost wax process made simple. A lot more complicated than that, many dynamics involved, but that's how the ancients did it, and this is a very ancient process, probably 6,000 to 8,000 years old.
It has to be kind of exciting for your, when you take this in and then go pick it up and see how it actually comes out and whether it's the vision you had in your mind in the first place.
Oh, well said. That's absolutely right. A candid observation. Very excited. I'm always so enthusiastic when I go to the foundry, or if they UPS me anything, anxious to see it finally materialize into something permanent.
Right.
Because this stuff's not very permanent, but yet we have ancient waxes that have come down to us from the Renaissance and earlier. Michelangelo made David out of wax, not much bigger than this, and he used it to make the great statue that he made.
As we move through your shop, one of the things that has always caught my attention is that some of the pieces that you work on are very small, and some that you'll have an opportunity to see this evening are very large. What is the largest
sculpture that I've made?
You've done?
Well, really, the largest sculpture that I have personally made stands about 7 feet on its pedestal. But as a student, I've spent a lot of time, and in fact, myself and a small group of other people almost exclusively brought from start to completion a major sculpture for the professor in charge of our art department. So I have worked on huge pieces, but the largest piece that I have my name on is about 7 feet.
It gets pretty heavy to pack around too.
Oh, well, marble in the cases in the instance that it would be a marble sculpture weighs 180 pounds per cubic foot. So
that's a lot of weight. That's a lot of weight. Why don't we move on down here and tell us what we're looking at?
This is a piece that very much resembles another sculpture that I made. Very often I'll get clients that come to my studio when they're interested in commissioning me to make a sculpture for them, and it's the best idea to come up here and get a very good idea at what I do rather than look at my portfolio, which I certainly have abundant pictures of, etc. But to come here and see what I've done. They saw another sculpture. In fact, they saw this sculpture. You can see how similar to these two are together.
Very similar, yeah.
Very similar, but yet different.
Right.
And really, I thought, well, they were not interested. We had a nice meeting, and they spent half of the day here, and they left. And I said, well, all right, so they're not going to buy anything. They're not going to commission me, and that's fine. That happens occasionally. Only to those reckless individuals who would come up with such a bad idea. But I just thought it might be such an instance. But then about a week later, the man called and said, my wife was very interested in that, you know, that one that was in a circle or something, he says, and she would like you to make that in marble. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm so disappointed, but I've already made that in marble. But I said, but wait. I can make something for you that's not too dissimilar. In fact, I do the best I can to try and extract out of an idea as many versions and explore that territory to the best of my ability anyway. So in other words, if I'm making things that are circular with holes in the center, I might want to do a few of those anyhow. It's in it to an artist's advantage, even for the show purposes, to show things that have some similarity for recognizable purposes in the public. So I said, let me design something for you. So I'll give you a little view of this in its entirety. Thank you. I call this Rapture. It's in marble about, half again as big. Belongs to Dr. Michael Balch in Wheatland, great dentist. Did my daughter's orthodontics work.
Another artist.
Another artist, you bet. In fact, those people have a lot of three-dimensional skills required of them. So this is the version of that piece. I think they are aquatic born. I think I was thinking of waves and seashells.
That's the feeling I get when I look at it.
Yeah, that's very definitely. So this is a current commission. In fact, it's going to come out of this piece of marble right here. This stone right here. This has a different drawing on it. I put a drawing for actually this sculpture, which I'll show you brief in a moment. And I decided, I like this. I want to make it bigger. I didn't want to make it out of a piece this small. So I cut it off here, and it extended out to here to encompass the shape you'll later see. And so,
is this a special marble?
Yes, it's special. Initially, it comes from Italy. It's referred to as it's Italian marble. It's particularly, it's referred to as Carrara marble. Even more clearly yet, it would be statuary marble. So. It's a very fine crystal structure, and that's most important for doing exacting work in marble. Crude work can be done with a coarser crystal structure, like marble that comes from Georgia, which is superb marble for architecture, not so good for sculpture though, but unless it's a relatively crude design. But I rarely make anything that's crude.
Okay.
So this piece will ultimately be this piece.
How long will it take you to convert this piece to this piece?
Oh, a couple hundred hours.
A couple hundred hours? Didn't surprise me at all. Before we move, I noticed this piece next to me here now. It's got a flat backing on it. And will it actually be mounted?
What I'm going to do with this is the piece that I'm working. This is the piece other than that piece that I showed you. I'm going to hold it up as if it's a relief sculpture. It's not. When it's finished, it'll lay down flat. So it's going to be a small domestic bronze. And it's a figure, a female figure, just a sleeping female, and it will lay down flat. And in bronze, it'll be this size. But I'd like to make it bigger. I'd like to make it probably about 2 feet by about 4 inches thick, and I may. She's a soft and gentle thing, and I think she looks very relaxed and happy.
Very peaceful.
Very peaceful, exactly. And it will lay flat.
Okay. Why don't we move back through your shop here a little bit. Now, what is this you're working on?
This is a concept that I've made some commitments to, a concept in designing that I've made some commitments to, and really what they are is variations on configurations of cloth. And I've tried to design and orient fabric and filled, in this case, for this period of time, the female form. Although I'm also interested in the male form, I'm at this time qualifying that because I may very well spend years dealing with the male form, but for the time being, I'm dealing with the female form. So obviously we have, I think, obviously, a female shape, and what it is, when I describe it to anybody who's not in my studio, I'll say, imagine a gown filled with the form and set into motion. And this is what we have
again,
here.
it does definitely show the motion.
Mm-hmm. Not too dissimilar to the. I've spent a lot of time paying attention to classic classic Greek sculpture, and this is not too dissimilar to Nike. If you will recall that dynamic female form with cloth clinging to her, bolting, she has wings. But this is the kind of movement that Nikki has that I'm also impressed with. Incidentally, here's the sketch for this. You see this crude sketch in wax? This is my form. I never begin a marble sculpture. Well, I shouldn't say never. I rarely begin a marble sculpture without first making a design or a pattern in wax, something to follow. I don't want to fail, and if I have a plan and a direction to go, I can pretty much rule failure out. Marble sculptures don't shatter, by the way, like the famous cartoon goes.
You don't knock too many of these over?
Well, actually, not too many, but I have had at least one mishap in my life that resulted in some damage that I was able to salvage, fortunately.
You were able to salvage?
Yes, I was able to make some modifications, and I even think that maybe it was a divine providence, because the modifications I made, unless this is some kind of superb rationalization, were positive.
Now this, for our viewers, I don't know if we've got the camera over here yet, but we have some black marble. Mm-hmm. And the black marble right now doesn't look very black.
No. This is the very finest the planet Earth has to offer in black marble. It's the famous Belgium black. It's in fairly short reserve, and it's a hard, brittle marble, difficult to work, and but yet, when one becomes accustomed to it, it can certainly be dealt with. It's kind of like dealing with a wolf, as when the white marble is like dealing with a lovely German shepherd. But it can be trained. And it doesn't look black because the surface is rough. And when light hits it, it bounces all over the place and diffuses and dulls the surface. But here, everybody knows when stones are wet, they turn darker. This will turn twice as dark as we have it now, and twice as dark more even after it's polished. So I hope your shoes don't get splattered. So you can see here,
it's beautiful,
that it turns pretty black, like a blackboard, and becomes absolutely jet black and beautifully polished. I prize this piece. The stuff's expensive, costing about $4 a pound, mm-hmm. and 180 pounds per cubic foot. So it runs into some money.
Can add up real quick, huh?
You bet. Mm-hmm.
Why don't we move over to your bench here?
These are some of the bronzes that, some of the very few bronzes that I have right now. But as the viewers have seen, and you and I have looked at, Tom, I have quite a collection, and many over here that we don't have time to look at, but the viewers notice that there is quite an assortment there that will turn into bronze, and I hope to come on the scene about November with at least 8 more new bronzes, and I'm very excited about that. But this is my bench where I primarily work on bronzes. Here's one. This is something fairly old I have made in marble. This is the little sketch. It was once in wax, and I have a mold to produce waxes that will in turn produce bronzes. It's a little figured most definitely in a wave, and I've had this for a long time. Thank you. Seashell, her feet poke through this modernistic abstracted wave, and there she is upside down, kind of holding her hair, flowing, kind of just floating in that wave. But this is ready to be polished. It's very clean, very articulated. I could bring it over on my polishing wheel, which is nothing more than a grinder with the polishing buffs and the appropriate resin, and in no time at all, areas will instantly turn up an unimaginably glowing golden, or more appropriately bronze color. It's almost miraculous what polish does to bronze and to marble. It's kind of like
this is one of your polishing tools here?
Yes, This is a little small right-angle die grinder, and this is an interesting little kind of abrasive pad that a person that I buy tools from suggests that I give a try to, and I've shown some other sculptors this, and I've never seen it listed at any kind of sculpture supplier, and it works beautifully. They have a coarse and a fine. Make a little noise. It's a pneumatic air tool, and I'll set this aside here. And you see here one that I've gone over quite a bit with the tool that looks like this. This is a cruder castingette showing areas that have not been touched since it came from the foundry and the original fire mold. So I'll go over a few of these areas and give you an idea of what it looks like. Let me grab my glasses for those optometrists in the audience. Here they are. Would you mind holding this for a second?
Let me get them for you.
Okay. They're right over here. I've given marble sculpting demonstrations before without my glasses, and I'm practically arrested. So.
Well, I would imagine that when you're grinding on this, some little particles could fly right off and land in your eyes, too.
I think in the bronze I'm concerned about it myself, but when it comes to marble sculpting, especially with hammer and chisel, I can direct the chips away from me. Though nobody believes me, they practically, they get real excited about it. But here it is important. So I don't know if the camera can pick up in these little pits, but they're inherent to even the best castings. And 98% of these pits can be erased and just get below the surface. And you can see here
How thick is the bronze?
Ideally, it's 1/8 of an inch thick. And these are hollow. They need to be hollow because if they were solid, the thermal dynamics, when the bronze begins to cool, will cool quicker on the surface and in the interior. And as the interior starts to cool, it'll make suck marks and draw marks, and looks like clay that you've seen, and even food that you've prepared on sometimes that have maybe fudge or something. It'll start to crack, and actually what they are is birth defects. So it has to be 1/8 of an inch thick, so it all cools at the same time, and then there's not a lot of gross shrinkage.
Okay.
So it stays stable.
Again, I'm Les Crook, your host for Artists Alive. We'd like to thank Philip Sciortino for having us up to his home, inviting us into the shop, and showing us the processes that he goes through with both bronze and marble sculptures. Thank you, Philip.
Pleasure, Les.
And we'd like to thank the Yuba Sutter Regional Arts Council for making this show possible, along with Continental Cablevision Channel 5. We hope you'll join us again next week. Good night.